Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I have Sunbow here. He is an author and shamanic practitioner. And for some of you who have been listening to the show, he has another episode with us on season 1, episode 10. And it's actually the second most listened to episode on this podcast. And so I reached out to Sunbow and he graciously decided to come on the show again. Welcome to the show, Sunbow.
Thank you, Tina. Thanks for having me again.
Why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself? Because I know that you're an author of several books, and share that with the audience.
Yes, I have written and published 6 books in the last 6 years. Working on a 7th one, and probably one a year will be my goal from now on. And the books that I've reached out the most still so far is the first series, the Sasquatch Message to Humanity, in which I describe my first-hand experience of encounters, plural, with Sasquatch and star beings, and messages they told me to transmit, to channel. And from that series, the 3rd book was a collaboration of 10 international co-authors who also channel Sasquatch. To conclude the series, then the Sasquatch guided me to write another book, the Hairy Humanoids from the Wild, Encyclopedia of all things Sasquatch, and in which they asked me to retell their stories, taking hundreds of sources of all the literature the past 5,000 years that has spoken about them, the hairy humanoids from around the world, but also all the different myths and lies and rumors, speculations that have been shared about them, that have been made up very often out of fictions and lies, also some cover-up from governments, agencies. So they asked me to definitely bring out the hidden side of the Sasquatch history that is very often occulted or unknown by most enthusiasts, let's say, or even researchers in this domain. And that series, the one I'm working on now, I got 2 volumes out. It's contemporary shamanic journeys, which describe decade by decade for each book my last 40 years of shamanic learning and journeys in 20 countries and meeting many elders and medicine people from several tribes, as well as my involvement with communities and various events, ceremonies. So that's pretty much in those books. Describes pretty much what I'm into, shamanic practice, interspecies communication, and with all the different aspects, because it's very vast.
Yeah, so in the last episode we recorded together, you talked about one of the first encounters you had with the Sasquatch people, and it spanned many decades. So what do you want to share about the Sasquatch people today? What do we need to understand the most about them?
They are our closest relatives, genetically speaking, but also spiritually, because they have been assigned as their mission to be the caretakers of our home planet, Earth, and its ecosystems. So that's for once, that's why they can be found in not only in forests, as most people think, but also in deserts, and the Midwest, and prairies, and jungles. Because they are the keeper of nature. At this point, they are reaching out more and more, very intensively to humanity. One of the signs we can see of it is how the number of sightings has been exponentially increasing in the last few decades, and more, as well as the general interest in Sasquatch. Sasquatch is a legend that's it's never going to die because it's alive. There's more and more every year movies and books and conventions and groups and everything you can think about Sasquatch. That it's a big topic, but sadly very misunderstood for several reasons. Well, one is that there's a lot of disinformation, very often intentional. There are, because our connection is Sasquatch is not just like meeting an unknown animal or primate, or it is understanding, it is changing our entire paradigm to understand that us humans are not the only intelligent, spiritually conscious beings, not only on this planet, but in the universe. Yet these beings we call Sasquatch are right around us, and they've been here for longer than us, and we still haven't proven, let's say officially, their existence, although there has been plenty of evidence, DNA samples, bodies, everything, that have been concealed. So that's the Sasquatch, but it's pretty much who they are that helps us understand who we are, what is our role in the universe, and as well as the bigger picture of our cosmic family, because there's not only Sasquatch, they're like ambassadors to the rest of the star family, the star council. So that's why it's so important. It's not just like a topic that of interest, of curiosity. It's that it is extremely meaningful for humanity's evolution at this point.
And you mentioned Star Council. Who is the Star Council?
The Star Council is the way I call them, as I've been taught by them, actually. The Sasquatch are, well, it's the Star Council, or the Council of Star Elders, as I say, is an intergalactic assembly that gathers souls or beings from many different species. They don't come from one specific place, or not based on one star system or another. They're across the universe, and they are basically watchers. They are keeping watch over the worlds, to their evolutions, how things unfold for the souls evolving on each planet, and life forms. And so as elders do, they watch and they guide, they offer teachings to those who want to evolved to use their wisdom. And actually, their wisdom is basically bringing back to the natural law, the universal laws that maintain the universe in harmony, not only on the physical plane, but also spiritually.
Wasn't humans originally supposed to be protectors of Earth as well as a Sasquatch?
Exactly. We've been put here as caretakers, and sadly, we haven't done a very good job with. We can see how the environmental crisis is going. It's not a myth, it's a reality. Biodiversity being depleted, ecosystems being destroyed on a daily basis, and some things are irreversible. And it's all due to human activity, or most of it. It's the Anthropocene extension event. So that's one more reason why the Sasquatch and Star Elders, but the Sasquatch mostly because they're our closest relative, ambassadors to the Star Elders, and caretakers, protectors of nature. So they live in this environment, and they want us to help them protect it. Because if it goes, we go as well.
Right. So about your books you're working on shamanism, can you talk a little bit more about what you're writing about in those books?
Yeah, there's a lot too many stories to summarize. To be honest, that's why I've been writing these books, because after 40 years plus now of traveling, and I engage very well, around 17, I engage willingly on a spiritual quest. My reason to journey, to travel, was to learn, to understand, to get some teachings. So that's what guided my steps. And it took me to many first spiritual schools and different religions or churches, ashrams, and all those things before connected with native elders and of many tribes. So I started with the Hopi pretty early, and others, and they brought answers to my questions. Their teachings clarified all my unanswered questions and connected the dots for me with other spiritual traditions. And ever since, also, it's not only a teaching; it's a practice. It's what do we do with this knowledge? We can sit on it, or we can live by it, and that's what my life became: a shamanic journey. So through all those years, I went on many adventures and missions, and I became a community organizer and sharing myself teachings and ceremonies I had learned, and also living a lot of paranormal, we could say, experiences that added up and over the years. And after a while, I started thinking, I'm forgetting half of it. It's like all those stories are so amazing that if I don't write them down, they're going to be lost. And I started nearly 20 years ago, about over 15 years ago, I started the first draft of this, I can say, biography, and my memoirs. And from the first draft, I It's, little by little, step by step. And like a couple of years ago, I had the guidance, well, you're done with the books on Sasquatch for now, although Sasquatch are always present in my life and part of my journey. But like I was guided to bring those books to completion. So now there's 2 volumes. So far, those 2 books make 888 pages. And the next couple volumes will be probably over 500 pages each. So there's many stories that most people or many people wouldn't even believe at times. However, there's teachings in those stories for those who can relate, and that's why I'm sharing them.
So can you share a particular story or experience with the audience from your books?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, right now, just last thing, that thing I'm writing on right now, just a chapter finished last night. It was on around 2003 and 4. I had a vision to invite the World Rainbow Gathering to my homeland in Quebec. Because of the guidance I had received from Anishinaabe elders and their Medewewin ceremony. Their Medewewin lodge or ceremony has been almost banished and was revived in the 90s, and it was still very secretive, and it was not open to non-natives until the year 2000, actually, when I was asked by Medewewin Lodge helper to bring a delegation of the Rainbow family there with me. So I did. We were the first non-natives invited in that millennia-old ceremony. And because we were going at the gathering with Grand Elder William Commanda, who was the keeper of the 7th fire prophecy and the wampum belts carrying it. So in the 7th fire prophecy, it says that it described the history of America and how things have evolved and changed and where it's heading. And in this 7th fire, this period of time we're in, it is said that people of all directions, of all colors, will come together and they will look for the wisdom left behind, and their steps will take them to the elders. And they must be careful how they approach the elders. They must come with respect. It is said that some of the elders by that time will be silent. Some won't have anything to teach. Some won't want to teach. But if the new people who's coming from the 7th fire and the elders persevere together, they will succeed in lighting the 8th and final fire, which is fire of a universal peace and brotherhood and healing on the planet. So as the keeper of the 7th fire, William Commanda was sharing those teachings at his yearly gathering called A Circle of All Nations, A Culture of Peace, where I attended for 11 years with medicine people from around the world. So it was very highly educative to be part of those medicine circles. So, but in the 7th fire prophecy, it says, like I said, that new people shall come and from the 4 colors and the 4 directions. So at the Medewin Lodge, we were invited to. They shared that prophecy and said, well, they said, you people here, you say you are this new people, or we hope so, actually. We hope a lot of people hope to be part of that prophecy because it's bringing a better world. It's not an exclusive club thing. But there's people who have been practicing and building communities and with some directions. And we went to that ceremony. They said, it might be you, but we need, they said, bring us people from the 5 continents and from the 4 colors of mankind. And then we'll recognize who you are, who this new people are supposed to. So that for that reason, I decided to, I had the vision to invite the World Rainbow Gathering that was started that same year in 2000, but it took, I wrote 2002 the first letters to get the idea started, and within a year we had council happening and a delegation went to Brazil World Gathering in 2003, and then Costa Rica the following year, where I happened to carry my talking stick I had used for the family for decades. And when I got to those gatherings, I happened to be the one who opened those international council and shared my vision, and which finally fulfilled in 2004 when 2,000 people from over 50 countries, the 5 continents, gathered on Anishinaabe homeland. And the others came and shared their ceremonies and teachings with us, and it created some lasting bonds that I've developed since. So that's the main, let's say, the main timeline. Of course, there's a lot of anecdotes and side stories to make the journey interesting.
So is this held annually, this gathering?
Oh yeah, it's the Rainbow Gathering is actually celebrating its 50th anniversary this summer. The first one was in Colorado, and this one, the annual US gathering will be in Colorado this year again. Then it spread well in Quebec. We started in '87, so that's the 35th anniversary this summer. And then there were gatherings started in Europe and Latin America and elsewhere, Australia, Asia. And then a world gathering started in 2000. I was actually part of the first circle who envisioned that world gathering. I was in a gathering in Portugal in '96, where that first documentation came out about having why not have instead of nationals all the time, why not have a world gathering that travels around the world? And that started, and I went to actually participated in like 4 of them, and very involved from the beginning of scouting and communication to the other end.
So who attends the Rainbow Gathering? Is it invitation only? Is it open to the public? How does it work?
There's a saying that if you have a belly button, you're a rainbow. So it's the most open, free, totally free, no cover charge, anything, food shared, everything shared. So it's based on peace and healing. It's inspired by native prophecies from different tribes, including the Hopi, who talk about coming of the Rainbow Warriors. Pretty much, they will come together. They will be recognized by the circle they form. They will stand for peace and protection of nature, and they will unite all colors, all cultures. And there's many details. Some say they will grow their hair like ancient did, and they will wear beads and feathers and reconnect with nature's medicine. So those prophecies are fairly famous. They can be found online and stuff. There's books on that. The book Warriors of the Rainbow, for instance, was written in 1962. And the first gathering was in 1972. So it's been 50 years, and it's been growing worldwide. Of course, we have to acknowledge that the last couple of years gathering is a different story. There's been a lot of, let's say, pressure for people not to gather. And a lot of people have, say, fallen to it, or kind of afraid nowadays to gather, or they want to, there's more opposition to the gatherings, let's say. So that, for me, the rainbow, I went to over 65 rainbow gatherings in 8 countries. So it was a school, it's been a school where, eventually you after being a student for so long, you actually become a teacher if you get the lesson right and you can share it. So I practiced a lot of my shamanic ceremonies and teachings and those gatherings, as well from learning from more experienced elders. However, it's like one school, it's part of the prophecy, so it must be meaningful, must be important, but it's one path that is based on universal teachings that we should all acknowledge each other as brothers and sisters, relatives to all life forms, and we should live in peace and maintain the harmony and develop lifestyles accordingly. So that's pretty much what I learned with the rainbow.
I think I need to attend one of these gatherings. I'm long overdue, so I'm going to see if I can attend that one this year, because it's the 50th anniversary, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a very special year. They expect, regardless of external circumstances, but also, like I said, in Quebec, we have it's a 35th year, and there is they made it the first Pan-American this year because they had council in Mexico about it, the World Gathering. So it's still expanding in a way in consciousness. Probably the numbers have dwindled. They have in the last decade or so, or 2 maybe. But the lessons learned are still applied, and there's a lot of people who came through the rainbow gatherings and learned different tools, community life, as well practical and spiritual principles, and from there carry on their path and become, like organic farmer or herbalist or shamanic practitioner or whatever, where life leads them, healer of some kind.
Now, you were in Australia during COVID, correct? And you got stuck over there. Can you talk a little bit about what you were doing in Australia, if you can? And I know it was frustrating because you weren't able to return to Canada right away.
It turned out to be a blessing in disguise because honestly, I took a 5-month ticket, and that's about what I could afford, and I was invited by some friends, but Australia is a big country.
Mhm.
And when it started, like I still travel pretty much like around 2/3 of Australia. Well, our first mission was to Uluru, Ayers Rock, some call it, right at the center of Australia, the biggest mega monolith on the planet. A very ancient sacred site with at least 40,000 years of artworks, at the very least. Our first mission was to go and do a ceremony to bring back rains, because Australia had been in a severe drought for 2 years. And by the time I got there, shortly after, fires started. Some say bushfires or wildfires, but I have information. They are not all wild at all. There's a lot of man-made destruction involved, geoengineering and things like that. Australia has, for instance, the largest amount of radar antennas in the world. It's the leading country. You would wonder why, for like 25 million people in such a big place. But we went through, actually, on our way to Uluru, we crossed a very huge military base, hundreds miles across, and we could see forests of antenna of microwave weapons, we can say. We've seen photos of HARP in Alaska. It's a tiny little thing compared to it's in Australia. So we went to Uluru because there was, on that January 12th, 2020, there was a special planetary alignment, and there was a special ceremony that was called partly by the local Aboriginal in Uluru. I'd rather say original, as they call themselves. And we went to, my friend and I, and his son and another friend. As four of us, we went on the journey. We started doing ceremonies on the way. Well, first we had an original elder come and initiate us. I was cut with a stone in the ceremony to become part of the land and be given permission to do ceremonies and welcome with blessings. So we went on a journey. We went to Uluru, and we did our own. There was like some kind of a big new age type gathering. That was a little bit, I don't want to judge, but somewhat of a bit snobbish, a bit quite expensive, actually, like outrageously expensive, to take part in a few workshops or stuff. So we were contacted by those people and they invited us, but when we met, we didn't connect. So we decided we'd just go on our own and do our own ceremonies, and we went out to Katajuta because most people know Uluru, but it's one of three similar formations that are lined up. There's a central one, it's called the Heart. There's Katajuta to the west and Attila to the east as well. So we went to Katajuta, which is because in Australia they have a lot of what they call women business or men business, which means ceremony or ceremonial place. There are places where reserved for men ceremonies or women ceremonies. Katajuta is more of a man ceremonial place, so we went there, four of us, and we did our ceremony as we had been guided to and inspired. I had found a emu leg that I made a medicine staff with it, and we did a medicine wheel and Hopi rain dance and a few things that might seem insignificant when you're in the middle of nowhere in the desert and we do your little ceremonies. But we had a very amazing surprise. On our way out from the ceremony, it started raining in the summer in the desert, which is extremely rare. And then the next day, and we looked at the radar maps, and actually the rain started in Uluru. All of Australia was burning and dry, and it started like a rainbow serpent, and it came down along the route we had followed and done ceremonies along the way. And on our way back, it took about a week to return from Uluru to Victoria, Melbourne area. Within that week, there was a huge, well, we call it rainbow serpent because it traveled like a rainbow serpent, went all around Australia. And there were record rains. There were all the fires were put out. All the wells and rivers were filled. And there was even a huge hail, Gulf size hail in Melbourne, Canberra, and Sydney, the three biggest cities, nowhere else. So it's like nature had the last word that time. And well, all I can say is we gave it a little help, a little push with our ceremony, because that's what, obviously, that's the timing that everything switched. It was the end of the biggest fire in history of mankind.
So that's really amazing. That must have felt really good to accomplish that.
Sure did. That was the beginning of my journey there, and then I was brought into other missions. Would be well, I couldn't say everything in an hour, but one of the other thing that is worth mentioning, because I started having invitations around Australia. People say, "Oh, we got Yowies in my backyard," or "I know where they live. I'll take you there." And so sadly, I couldn't honor all those invitations because that's when the lockdown came. But I did meet some amazing people, including some original communities. One in Deebing Creek in southeast Queensland, where I hung around 4 months with those people that are they've been struggling to protect their ancestral sacred site, historical burials, artifacts, and a wildlife refuge, which is just a few square miles, but it's being encroached by city urbanization and a military base. And so they're having a lot of, they really have to resist. They've done everything from court cases, injunctions, direct actions for like 40 years, and they're still at it, trying to protect a sacred land. When I went there, the first, second time I went there, I went out to the woods and started seeing the Yowies, as they call the Sasquatch out there most commonly, but I must say every tribe has a different name. So I couldn't list them all, but there's quite a few. Yowie is the most common, as we say, Bigfoot here.
Mm-hmm.
So I met those Yowie and they started guiding me. And the first thing they showed me was a big massacre pit filled with bones, disposed corpses that were burnt in limestone and stuff. And there were probably hundreds of corpses there. And I saw that. I said, "Oh, it's horrible. What can I do?" You know, I did a little prayer and offering, and but it was not over. They asked me. They said, "You got to do something about this." That first night, I happened to speak to a local original community there, to some matriarchs, I guess, some grandmothers. When I mentioned I had seen the Yowie, they say, "Oh," they say, "Can you teach us about the Yowie? And we'll take you where they have structures." And that same night, there was a group of us going on a Yowie expedition. The next morning, as a coincidence, we could say coincidence, but it's so the timeline. The next morning, as a coincidence, the bulldozers moved in exactly to that place we had gone the night before to see those tree structures. I'm not talking about a small bulldozer. They were building like a huge highway there, and with barbed wire fence and security guards, a huge construction project. And I happened to find myself on the front line with those people, filming the exchange they had. You know, with they started a blockade and stopped the works for a few days at least, and mobilization started again, as they were used to it. So anyway, to make the story short, that's when the lockdown started. Nobody was allowed to go anywhere, and state borders were closed. I couldn't travel anywhere. It was extremely difficult to find a bus because there was about 1/10 of the lines working, and they were half capacity. So you had to book days ahead and everything. It's just to make the story short. It became much harder to travel. So I hung around that community, and during those 4 months, I happened to be guided to document first and research about that massacre pit, about the history of that place, and with the guidance of the Yowie and spiritual guides. I produced a 170-page report in a website that I put it on. It's called Sovereign Originals. And it started, well, one of my friends, especially out there, was hosting me, and we can say an investigation on that topic, and actions, to have they had the police come, they had the different department, city, state, and everything. They had to do a lot of work to get someone even care about recognizing there's a huge massacre pit there, because they all try to cover it up and to deny it and to say, oh no, it's not. First it's some kind of stone, oh probably later maybe corals, oh no, maybe animal bones, but they're never going to admit what's happened there because they want to pave over it. So to make the story short, my friend continued with that, and just recently, actually, she got the expertise of famous anthropologist, the one who discovered the Mongo Man, one of the famous fossil record that push back the dates for Australia. So that's one of the things, I have to do. I just basically, bring out the truth and the information I was given. And just as well as with the Yowie, because I had several encounters there at times with.
So why do you think they showed you that pit of bones? Was it to recognize it was there, that shouldn't pave over it or run a road through that, or?
Yeah. First, those souls needed to be sent in peace.
Mm-hmm.
The main purpose, my other friend who invited me to Australia in the first place had done a similar work on another massacre site where the original elders actually asked him to come and do a ceremony, because it's extremely difficult for them to face it themselves. As an example, the pit I found, I tried at first to show it to the others. Look at this. And they would just turn around and walk away. They couldn't, first of all, they have certain taboo with death, but also seeing that your relatives, your ancestors were, massacred and treated this way, it's extremely hard to admit, even for the descendant of the victims. So as an outsider, it was for me a little, I won't say easy, but it was a little easier to face this reality and document it and deal with it. For the healing. Second is that for the protection of the site, because if this finally becomes acknowledged, because there's been progress and it's being worked on still, well, that definitely will give us a good reason not to put a shopping mall over it.
Mm-hmm. So what's going on in that area now? Have they stopped
They're
building?
They're continuing to protect the land. Like I said, it's been there for years. There's always more and more pressure, but there's also some power that protect this place. For instance, the Yowie showed up there. So and there's more, there's legends of each gully has a legend. There's a lot of history. There's actually 3 massacre sites or mass graves within a square kilometer there.
Wow. Yeah, that would be a bad idea to build over that.
Definitely, if you want some nightmares.
Happens a lot in the US.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. There's a lot of activity just in the land that I live on, and a lot of activity in these homes. And these homes are less than 10 years old.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's wonderful. You were able to recognize and be of service to the local people there. Are those souls at rest now? As long as it doesn't get disturbed.
Well, we did partly send them to wish them to rest in peace. Of course, that's one thing I've done in several other places as well. Ancient sites or ancient battlefields, or where it's not being cleared. There's still things lingering, even memories. And sometimes it takes well, just a little help
Yeah.
to send those beings on their way.
Sometimes all it takes is just acknowledging what happened,
Yeah.
acknowledging, instead of turning away from it, ignoring it, acknowledging the people who died there and their stories and validating that they are there, that creates peace.
Yeah.
Right?
Honoring their memory as well, like
Right.
recognizing, but also like giving them the honor they deserve.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show again, Sunbow. And if you want to share, I know your books are on Amazon. I've read the series, Sasquatch's Message to Humanity, which are really good books. I highly recommend them. If you want to understand who Sasquatch is and why are they here and how they're related to us, and the star people, it's all in these books. And your other books you're working on, are they going to be published soon? What's the timeline for those?
Well, there's the Encyclopedia of Sasquatch, been out since 3 years, and the Contemporary Shamanic Journeys. 2 volumes are out. I recommend people to get them on lulu.com, because they are much more fair with the authors than Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
And they also can be available on different other platforms, like Barnes and Noble, Goodreads, and stuff.
Well, all of your contact information I will have in the show notes. And thank you again for being on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.